Rams house. On today's episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks, we're addressing what ESPN said are the three biggest questions left for this Rams team this offseason. Our ESPN beat reporter Sarah Barshop has put together an article illustrating what she thinks are the three things remaining that this Rams team has to solve before they enter the 2026 season, a season where we all know the expectation is Super Bowl or bust. So on today's show, we're going to break down all three of these questions. I'm going to try to answer them as best as I can for you guys and give you the information we have around all three of these situations right now on today's show. But before we do it, what is your biggest question about this Rams team? What's the biggest question left for you as we approach the 2026 season? I want to hear them in the comments section below, Ramily. I want to hear from you guys. And if we get enough questions, we might gather them all up and do a little mailbag episode later this week where I answer all of the questions from the Ramily in a new episode of the Rams Report. So drop your questions in the comments and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss that mailbag episode later this week. But let's get into Sarah Barshop's questions. Before we get to your guys' questions, we got to get through hers. And the number one, what else could it possibly be around this Rams team right now than will Aaron Donald come back? There is no hotter topic in the Rams fan base, in the Ramily right now, than wondering whether or not 99 is returning. It has been discussed by everybody who talks about the Rams. We've talked about it on this channel. Jake Ellenbogen has talked about it on his channel. Every Locked On Rams is talking about it. Players are talking about it. ESPN is talking about it. Everybody is wondering whether or not Aaron is going to come back. Even our coaches are commenting on it. Chris Shula, just recently, he was asked, if you want Aaron Donald back, which honestly, silly question. Of course he wants Aaron Donald back. And he immediately answered, oh, of course. But that's completely up to him. But obviously, we'd love to have him back, and we would welcome him with open arms. Sarah makes it very clear in her article that this Rams team wants to see Aaron back, but they're just not trying to pressure him into it. I think at this point, we all understand he's 35 years old. This is his decision to make. But it does seem like he's pretty interested in doing it. Last night, I was sitting at dinner, browsing Instagram, and what do I see? A really cool Aaron Donald edit from Rams Tapes. Shout out Rams Tapes. And in the comments section, in less than 20 minutes of this thing getting posted and Aaron getting tagged in the caption, who is in there with a fire emoji? It is Aaron Donald himself. Guys, I mean, look, does that mean he's coming back? No. But in combination with everything we've been hearing from everybody, the man himself even on Pat McAfee saying he's really thinking about it, it's just hard not to believe that Aaron Donald is coming back to this team in 2026. It is hard not to feel that if he isn't coming back, then he's kind of being mean, man. You're teasing us a little bit here. Like, what are we doing? You're pulling our legs. I think Aaron Donald, he's not playing with us like that. That's not the kind of guy that he is. At the end of the day, he is seriously considering this decision. And I do ultimately believe that it's going to result in a return to this team for Aaron Donald. And we're going to continue discussing the other two questions that Sarah Barshop had on today's show. But before we get to those two, I've got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, guys, and it's our friends over at America's #1 sports picks app, Prize Picks. Guys, if you love daily fantasy or you just want to add more excitement to watching sports, you've got to try out Prize Picks. And if you never have, it is a great time to get started because the World Cup is underway. Guys, I have been having a ton of fun placing lineups on some of the World Cup action. Because it's just so easy. I'm not even really a soccer guy. I don't really watch outside of the World Cup, but it is just so easy to put together a lineup on Prize Picks. All you got to do is pick from 2 to 6 players. You're selecting more or less on their stat projections. You can pick from pass attempts, goals, assists, shots, saves. They've got it all on Prize Picks. Plus, they've got a bunch of other sports if soccer is just not your thing. Plus, they also have awesome social features that allow you to easily tail or fade your friends or your favorite creators, including me. I'm Jackson Durham with no spaces on the app, guys. So you can just look up my first and last name and you can drop a quick follow. And you can tail all of the lineups that I've got going on for the World Cup right now, including this one with Prize Picks' discounted projection on Cristiano Ronaldo, It's just all he has to do is get one pass attempt. So that one, I've got to have it in all of my lineups right now. And then we're going with Harry Kane on the goal and assist combination there. That's 25 to win 75. You guys can tail me. You can fade me. Whatever you do, just do it with our friends at Prize Picks. And if you're brand new to Prize Picks, make sure you use our promo code. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's go to HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. All right, let's keep rolling on today's show. To question number 2, which fittingly involves a 2. What's the plan for QB2? And I think this is something we've talked about on this channel before. I know this is something we've talked about on this channel before. The battle right now between Stetson, Bennett, and Ty Simpson. Sarah Barshop said, and it's tough to tell, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Her intro paragraph of this is, it is expected that Ty Simpson will be the backup quarterback. And now if I had Sarah in front of me, if I was interviewing her right now, my follow-up question to that would be, by you or by the Rams? She doesn't elucidate that because throughout this article, she kind of speaks from the information she knows around the Rams and what she's been hearing from them, and also from a broad media perspective. I do kind of believe that when she says this, she's saying more like it is expected by the general public that Ty Simpson will be the backup, because she does go on to kind of elucidate here there is an ongoing competition. And the interesting element of that competition that I don't think we've talked about enough on this channel is that Stafford being the starter affords a lot more opportunity to these two guys behind him. And that may sound counterintuitive, given that Stafford is the MVP. You may be wondering, why on earth would that be more opportunity for these two guys in the preseason and in training camp? Because the Rams have been protective of Matthew Stafford. And they've said this year already, we're going to continue to be very protective of him. Last season, he did not participate in camp, dealing with that back injury. This season, they've said it will be a very light workload for him. He's going to have rest days built into the schedule to kind of mimic a little bit of what they did last year. They're not going to try to fully slow him down. He's obviously not dealing with that same injury situation, but there is an effort here by this Rams team to ensure that the workload for Matthew Stafford is managed and try to get him back into the same rhythm that he had last season. I think it's really smart to do that. And so with that in mind, with the fact that they are going to limit Stafford's workload in mind, this is what she had to say about the Rams' backup QB competition. She said both Simpson and Bennett will likely see more snaps during training camp and the preseason than other backup candidates around the league because of the approach the Rams are likely to take with Stafford. Although McVay said the Rams are still working through the plan for the reigning NFL MVP, Stafford will likely have rest days built into his training camp schedule. Again, this is exactly what we've been talking about. We know that they had this plan. They had this plan last offseason to manage his back injury. But when you look at the results, I think they go back to, okay, what did we do to prepare for last season that was different than the other years prior? And additional rest, I think, is what they're realizing may have played a role in Stafford's success. So I think from the Rams, there's an element of, look, we had a lot of success limiting Stafford's workload last year, ensuring that he was 100% by the start of the season. And so that's what we're going to try to do again this year. And it makes a lot of sense, obviously not just because Matthew Stafford came out and played in an MVP level last year. Obviously he did. But also makes sense because you've got young quarterbacks on this roster. Because you've got young QBs on this team that are going to need opportunity, especially Ty Simpson. At the end of the day, Ty Simpson has played 15 games of football at higher than a high school level. 15 games as a starter. He's going to need a lot of reps to get ready. The idea is that we don't see him on the NFL field in real NFL action for a while. But that doesn't mean he doesn't get training camp reps. That doesn't mean he doesn't get to see some action in the preseason. These are live fire reps that can make Ty better. But it isn't just about Ty at the end of the day. Again, this remains a competition. And we talked about the praise that the coaches have had for Stetson Bennett. What Sean McVay said about him this offseason. Tremendous growth from Stetson at this point. This remains a competition between these two guys to establish the QB2 job. And I do truly think it is a more important role than people give it credit for. I know some of you out there are going, why have we just spent a couple minutes here debating a backup position? But when you are starting a 38-year-old at quarterback, you have to be confident in who you have behind them. And I think the Rams are setting themselves up well to enter a situation with two guys that they might be confident in. But it's just kind of about deciding who are you more confident in as this season progresses. The guy who's been here longer, the guy who has more time in the system and is starting to show some growth, or the guy you took in the first round this year. Very interesting conversation for this Rams team. We'll continue to monitor. But let's get into question number 3, and maybe the most important narrative. Obviously, Aaron Donald draws a lot of attention. But this final narrative here, extensions before the season, after the season, or at all, for a lot of the Rams' biggest stars from the 2023 draft has remained the thorn, right? We've had this conversation so many times around who's getting paid. When are they getting paid? We know this list. You guys have seen this. If you're a regular viewer of the Rams Report, you have seen this list before. But every single one of these guys remains unpaid. You have not gotten a long-term extension done with any of these 5 options, all 5 of which are going to be paid big-time money by somebody in 2027. There's one guy on this list that I have told you guys over and over again is the one that's going to get paid. We'll continue to get into that later on today's show. But these other 4 have continued to be conversations. We've talked about Byron Young as a potential odd man out. We've talked about Kobe Turner as maybe the anchor point of this defensive line going forward, but nothing is set in stone yet. Then, of course, the offensive line has its own questions. Warren McClendon, Steve Avila, and you could even throw Coleman Shelton in here as well. He also needs an extension, although it won't be in the neighborhood of these deals. Kevin Demoff, Rams team president, spoke recently about this conundrum. This was actually before the Myles Garrett trade. And I think what he had to say is worth noting for Rams fans. He said, I think this is what we're trying to weigh, is what do you spend if you've amassed a little bit of a cushion this year, a war chest to go spend it? Do you spend it on 26 and how you can get better in acquiring more players? Or do you spend it on these extensions, which will help you in the future? But by the way, they're all under contract this year, right? And so I think that is a balance we will look at over time and try to get ahead of it as well. So this was after the Trent McDuffie trade, but before the Myles Garrett trade. And I think you can kind of see a 2-part philosophy in what Demoff says. No, we're going to focus on acquiring players that can make us better and building for 2026, using the war chest in 2 different ways. So war chest acquisitions 1 and 2, Trent McDuffie and big Myles Garrett. That was the huge one. This really depleted the war chest as far as draft picks go. And of course, it had its effect on cap as well. But Myles being willing to support the team as far as cap goes has a positive effect on other elements of this. But I think you can look at that conversation, if we're going to split it into 2 parts. Part 1 is now complete. You have done the outside external work. You have made 2 enormous acquisitions in Trent McDuffie, who you have locked up for a long time, and Myles Garrett, who you also have locked up for a long time. Thank you, Cleveland Browns. But now it's a question of the other guys. Now we're on to part 2 of what he talks about. These extensions that help you be good for a long time, for the future. And again, you go back to that Sean McVay quote that I've cited a lot on this. We're not all in on 2026. We're all in on being good all the time. The Rams will not let Puka Nacua out the door. Again, The other ones are more questionable. The Rams will have to make tough decisions. But letting Puka go does not adhere to a we're all in on being good all the time philosophy. Letting generational talent at the receiver position, one of the most important positions in our game, walk out the door is just incongruent with the idea that you are a team that is trying to be good all the time and trying to be as aggressive as humanly possible to maximize your opportunities. You can't draft a guy like this in the fifth round where you got him and let him go. I've talked about him before as not just an important piece of this team's future on the field. I truly think that's obvious. I think everybody knows Puka is going to be a key piece of the Rams team for the football perspective. But I think you also have to focus on Puka as the fan base builder that he is absolutely capable of being. As the answer to the problem that's kind of existed since you returned to Los Angeles, which is we need to build here an authentic fan base that's going to support this team game in and game out at SoFi Stadium. And this is the kind of player you need to keep around to build that fan base. I know as Rams fans, we don't like having this conversation, but we are one of the smaller fan bases in the NFL. And the move back to Los Angeles, as of right now, has created a slow rebuild of this fan base. But there are young fans in Los Angeles who get excited about watching Puka every week. You cannot alienate them by getting rid of him. This team will not alienate them by getting rid of him. He will be back in 2027. He will be with this team for a very long time. I know it's a burning question for a lot of Rams fans. I know there's a lot of people out there telling you that the Rams cannot afford to keep Puka around. So I wanted to confront that once again today and try to, again, insist that this Rams team is not going to let him leave. But outside of that one, what's your biggest question about the Rams? I want to hear from you guys as we close out today's show. Get in the comments for me and drop your biggest question around this Rams team that you have right now. Like I said, later this week, if we get enough questions, we're going to answer them in a mailbag episode. So drop your questions, make them good, and I will see you guys in the next one. Of course, we appreciate you watching. And as always, let's go Rams.